Welcome back. I'm Tyler, you're watching Scarfing Scarves, and welcome to the 46th installment of Last Week Lolita News. At the top of the segment, those of you paying attention may have noticed that the last installment was 47. Some of you just thought about checking, and the minute number of people who actually saw this channel skip an episode can now rest assured that the sole reason this happened is that the reporter behind said channel has a nasty habit of overscheduling, burning out, and then jumping off an existential cliff just to wrap things up with a bang. Most people would have just admitted that they cannot do the work of 5 people before skipping town to go to an anime convention. I prefer to run off shrieking into sleep deprivation and then blame thermodynamics when my brain melts down. Speaking of meltdowns, Angelic Pretty has announced a made-to-order for Fruity Lemon. This is the only way you can get the head bow, and this reporter would like to know at just what temperature the Arbiter's brain was stored at to yeet this whole spring release into a season primarily known for frigidity and death. Any man who offers me a cold glass of lemonade in the middle of December is liable to get noped in the face. I'll be over here with the rest of humanity, sipping hot chocolate like a decent Santa-fearing individual. Moving on to releases that don't make you wonder at the madness of it all, BTSSB has taken a break from pushing out entire paragraphs to instead release a series with only 3 words to its name. This print is called Toy's Fluffy Dream. It is absolutely adorable, and while the boob sash does more to distract from the design than to accomplish anything remotely sensible, I will forgive it for a few off-key design elements if it means I can get the fracking name out in a single breath. That said, sources say this is just the calm before the storm. Stay tuned for next week's rendition of Spooky Baby Sparkle Party on Magical Journey, Haunted Bumpkin Edition, this time Electric Boogaloo. There's also a high-waisted version if you have lima beans for tits or prefer to do some stuffing and fight gravity on your own terms. Turning towards a brand that has recently risen from the grave, transitioned into a home goods store, and occasionally released hot-glued hair accessories out of spite, LWLN is playing a funeral dirge yet again with the reveal of the Gardenia OP and accompanying apron. This OP is especially perfect for anyone who would like to pay roughly $400 to look like a LARPer. Brand enthusiasts should be shocked to find out it only comes in black or blue, not both. And should you like to spice up this mourner's image with the associated apron, it will only cost you the better half of $200 to look like the hired help of a landed aristocrat circa 1776. Some are confused as to the specificity of that date, others are secure in the knowledge that my Americentricity makes it nigh impossible for it to be anything else. One would think that the entire LWLN fanbase would declare independence post-accessories jumping ship off their head, but it would seem the tea is not yet hot enough for the harbor, and thus ends all the American historical references a high school education can provide. Turning towards releases that actually matter, Angelic Pretty has finally heard the collective prayers for another cat print, and dropped the fluffy bomb last Friday evening, Saturday in Japan time, and God only knows for places outside the land of student debt and the foremost country for making 8-legged sea creatures do things that nature never intended. This release is called the one and only Fleur Cat. The felines look like they were drawn by a medieval concept artist, and while their tiny black eyes and near negligible nose give this frock more resemblance with something I would see during sleep paralysis than the fluffy kittens they were going for, there is no amount of dignity this reporter won't destroy to obtain anything printed with small fuzzballs decorated by even smaller foliage. This is enough of an obsession to forgive the god-awful blue-green hellscape AP is currently calling a colorway, and nearly enough to accept that the official head accessory looks like the exact design you would expect to top the head of a Neko Mato right before they let out a loud enough nyan to send my soul careening into the void. That said, no amount of cat-eared debauchery will stall me on this release. I will see you all on the battlefield come the night of blood and shrieking. As that about wraps up the week, this community has managed to go at least 7 days without setting anything on fire, and this reporter still has several videos to edit before I rip Van Winkle my way into the next month. We turn towards LWLN's next special segment. Most heartwarming moments in EGL, otherwise known as the host of this show, is gone soft and will now sell their soul down the river for cheap, cheap feels. That said, enough of my verbosity, let's get down to brass tacks. It all started in Ruffle Chat. The OP asked the community for their stories as to the best, most heartwarming compliments people have ever received while wearing Lolita. And to buck the trend of this group immediately devolving into utter chaos the moment anyone breathes too loudly, it was instead a truly touching thread of personal experiences that actually distracted from the fact that the majority of these rabid magpies will bite you if minutely provoked. That said, we can forget about all that for now, and in the spirit of dropping the salt for a spoonful of sugar, the following were my favorite responses. Names have been changed to protect the sweet. Let's start with a girl we'll call Marianne, who says, "It's always the children's reactions that make me happy because to them, Lolitas are beautiful queens. Older women seem to also be inspired by the fashion. I had one lady say I made her day." First of all, this comment is high-key accurate. Second, there is nothing better in this fashion outside of a blessed cat print that beats an excitable older woman launching into her entire life story the moment anyone has a skirt circumference wide enough to hide a Christmas ham. They are the reminiscing angels adjacent to this fashion, and if you think I won't be late to a meetup just to hear the end of Great Aunt Mabel's History of the Crinoline, you have never witnessed the true power of someone's great-grandmother going into turbo shuffle just to tell you look pretty before you get too far out of earshot for her to offer you a butterscotch and a back in her day. 10 out of 10 comfy post, Marianne. And turning towards our second testimonial, another girl who we'll call Caitlin said, I had a really cool interaction forever ago at my college. I was hanging out at the student lounge between classes and this guy wearing punk came up to me. Covered in tattoos, piercing, banty, mohawk, the whole stereotypical punk. I was expecting him to ignore me or maybe make a snide comment, but he told me he liked my outfit and said he was excited to finally see someone on campus with style. It was just a really wholesome interaction and made my day. Oof, right in the heart. This story has a special place in mine because as a member of the goth community, our club sees its share of the punk affiliation. And let me tell you, not only is this one a really nice rendition of what to expect, I can verify that I've yet to meet a single mohawk sporting gentleman that isn't also a walking teddy bear covered in spikes. I've taken to calling this public acknowledgement of our fellow alternative types the weirdo nod, and while I don't know if it's universal, I do know that I have yet to cross paths with a single oddball while in goth or Lolita that didn't immediately make eye contact and incline their head in a silent notice of a companion on the road to what the fuck are you wearing. Punks and goths alike are known for their close-knit communities, and while both would sooner set their wardrobes ablaze than let in a single scrap of this aggressively pastel fashion, they will cheer from the sidelines if only so they can see one more person who hasn't taken khaki pants as a religious calling. Caitlin has made my fracking day with this sappy punk affair, and turning towards the take of a girl we shall call Sherry, when asked for her most heartwarming comment, she said the following. Every time a little girl has asked me if I'm a princess, and I've said, yes, and you can be a princess too, and their face is lit up, I really hope these girls have gone on to realize how awesome they can be. Excuse me, but you cannot say something that wholesome and not have this reporter disintegrate into a pile of salt and feels. To look aside from the overall adorable response elicited from these little kids, what Sherry said there goes so far beyond cute into something really fracking important. Too many little girls go through relatively rigid social expectations of how they are to present themselves as they progress, and the fact that they could be presented with the idea that they truly can grow up to live into whatever they themselves desire to be is so fracking encouraging to see, because they really can. Despite what society or their upbringing has insisted on, they truly can decide for themselves how their lives are going to be lived, and mana willing. If that life so happens to include several petticoats and a penchant for wearing enough BB&B to put a small bakery out of business, we shall welcome them with open arms and the customary salt shakers set aside for those uninitiated to this bastion of false eyelashes and whatever bickering happens to be going on at the time. That was an S-class bit of sweetness, Sherry, and to move on to our final story for the show, and a personal favorite, we'll have Jolene finish it off with her account of an interesting encounter. We were coming back from the pub once after a meet, and a slightly drunk woman came up to us and said she's seen us around before and that we were the epitome of women. You give no fucks. I honestly aspire to live that out every time I'm in frills. First of all, yes, Jolene, you live that best life. And second, can we drop the salt for a moment to appreciate just how amazing this blurb from this modern drunken master truly is? Most of the drunk women in my life have been more likely to find inventive ways to hit the floor than to offer sage advice on the nature of femininity. But my experience aside, Jolene appears to have struck gold with what has to be the truest rendition of the female spirit I have ever seen. Because that is the epitome of womanhood. All the women who have ever done the world proud have done so with their middle fingers raised high, and while it may seem saccharine to get starry-eyed over the accomplishments of our foremothers in the context of this underwater basket weaving of a fashion, I will salute the strength of conviction it takes to wear and exist as a woman outside of society's expectations until the day I die. The epitome of women give no fucks is a mantra to live by, and I like to think each and every one of us lives up to that every time we don our hoop skirts and sashay out into the world. Because that's all the time we have for tonight. Thank you for watching Scarfing Scarves, and be sure to tune in next week when we tackle the tough topics like, is that my undying trauma, or are you just happy to see me? Is there any low this reporter won't sink to for a cat print? And was this show body snatched by a person with an actual conscience, or has it just been sold down the river for the sake of comfy posting? Next time on Last Week Lolita News. This has been Tyler, you've been watching Scarfing Scarves, and before you start checking the milk cartons for the saltine cracker that should be running this program, you should know that this show is sponsored in part by BB&B. Their jewelry is one of the only things in this life that makes my wretched heart beat with joy, and should you be able to get them before I buy out their entire stock on a coffee-fueled bender, you can find their gorgeous offerings at bbnb.net. Link to their shop below, and to wrap things up with a big fracking bow, I'd like to send an extreme thank you to my patrons for putting up with my petulant ass for as long as they have. Which is to say, for any time at all. Your efforts to endure my general flailing have not gone unnoticed. And thank you for being the only thing that keeps this show functioning on any noticeable level. You guys are the best salt shakers a reporter could ask for, and should you like to join the ranks of people responsible for this celebration of the strange and sarcastic, you can head over to patreon.com/lastweeklolitanews. I am not responsible for your sudden agony at what you will encounter. Thanks again, guys, and I'll catch you next time.